The summer evening was warm, and the streets of the small neighborhood were crowded with activity. Laughter and the occasional bark of a dog filled the air as a group of teenagers, Jake, Emma, and Ryan, gathered by the old oak tree at the corner. It was their usual hangout spot, a place where they could chat about school, play games, and escape the watchful eyes of their parents. As they discussed their summer plans, Jake's attention was drawn to a girl he recognized from school, Lily. She was walking down the sidewalk with a man who appeared to be her father. Something about their interaction seemed off. Lily's steps were hesitant, her eyes darting nervously, while the man, tall, with a stern expression, kept a firm grip on her arm. "Hey, do you guys see that?" Jake said, nudging his friends. Emma and Ryan turned to look, their expressions quickly shifting from curiosity to concern. "Isn't that Lily? She looks really uncomfortable," Emma remarked, squinting to get a better look. "Yeah, and I don't think I've ever seen her with that guy before," Ryan added, frowning. The trio exchanged worried glances. They weren't the type to jump to conclusions, but something about the situation just didn't sit right. With a silent agreement, they decided to follow at a distance, keeping to the shadows to avoid being noticed. As they trailed Lily and the man, the teens noticed the girl's increasingly anxious behavior. She kept glancing back, her eyes pleading, but she said nothing. The man's grip tightened every time she slowed down, and his demeanor grew more agitated. The group followed them through the winding streets until they reached an old, dilapidated house at the edge of town, a place long abandoned and rumored to be haunted. The man led Lily inside, and the door slammed shut behind them. "We have to do something," Jake whispered urgently, his heart pounding. "This doesn't look right." Emma nodded, pulling out her phone. "I'll call the police. We need to get her out of there." Ryan, ever the cautious one, looked around for any sign of other adults or help, but the streets were eerily quiet now. "Let's just hope we're not too late," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. As Emma dialed, Jake and Ryan crept closer to the house, hoping to find a way to see inside. They had no idea what they might find, but one thing was certain. Something was very wrong, and they couldn't stand by and do nothing. After a few tense minutes, the front door creaked open, and the man stepped out, glancing around before heading down the street, his figure disappearing into the twilight. The teens waited until he was out of sight before making their move. "Now's our chance," Jake urged, motioning for Emma and Ryan to follow him. They crept up to the house, the wooden steps groaning under their weight. The windows were too grimy to see through, and the front door was locked tight. "Let's try the back," Emma suggested, leading the way around the side of the house. They found a small, ground-level window slightly ajar. Jake and Ryan tried to pry it open further, but it wouldn't budge. "Come on, we need to get in there," Ryan said, frustration evident in his voice. They took turns trying to force the window open, but it was no use. The old house was sturdier than it looked. After a few minutes of fruitless effort, the sound of approaching footsteps made them freeze. Emma peeked around the corner, and her eyes widened in alarm. "He's back, and he brought friends," she whispered urgently. Panic set in as the man returned with two other men, their faces hard and unfriendly. They noticed the teens immediately, their expressions darkening. "Hey, what are you kids doing here?" one of the men shouted, breaking into a run towards them. "Run!" Jake yelled, and the trio bolted from the house, adrenaline surging through their veins. They sprinted down the street, their pursuers close behind. The teens darted around corners and through backyards, leaping over fences and weaving through alleys. Their pursuers were relentless, but the teens knew the neighborhood better. After what felt like an eternity, they managed to lose the men in a narrow alleyway, ducking behind a large dumpster to catch their breath. That was too close, Ryan panted, wiping sweat from his brow. We need to call the police again and tell them everything, Emma said, her voice shaking but determined. Lily needs our help, and those men. They're dangerous. Jake nodded, still breathing heavily. We won't let them get away with this. We'll get her out of there, no matter what. As they caught their breath, they knew their night was far from over. They had to find a safe place to call for help, and fast. The image of Lily's terrified face was seared into their minds, driving them forward with a renewed sense of urgency and resolve. Determined to find help, the teens emerged from their hiding spot and sprinted through the dimly lit streets, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. They flagged down passing cars, banged on doors, and pleaded with anyone who would listen, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. We have to tell someone. Lily could be in danger. Emma exclaimed, her voice tinged with desperation. But the responses they received were all the same: disbelief, skepticism, and dismissiveness. You kids are just playing a prank, one passerby scoffed, rolling their eyes as they hurried away. We don't have time for this. Jake shouted in frustration, his fists clenched in impotent rage. Even when they finally managed to reach a police officer, their hopes were dashed. The officer listened to their story with a bored expression, barely sparing them a glance. Kids these days, always making up stories for attention, he muttered, shooing them away with a wave of his hand. Go home and play video games or something. Leave the real work to the adults. The teens exchanged incredulous looks, disbelief washing over them like a cold wave. How could no one see the urgency of the situation? How could they turn a blind eye to a girl in trouble? We can't give up, Ryan said, his voice determined despite the frustration simmering beneath the surface. We have to find another way to help Lily, even if no one else believes us. With heavy hearts and a renewed sense of determination, the trio set off once again into the night. They may have been alone in their fight, but they refused to let that stop them. Lily's safety was worth any risk, any sacrifice. And as long as they drew breath, they would never stop searching for a way to rescue her from whatever horrors awaited her inside that forsaken house. The teens refused to give up, their determination burning brighter with each rejection. They raced through the neighborhood, pounding on doors and ringing doorbells, desperate to find someone who would listen, someone who would take them seriously. Finally, they reached Lily's house, their hearts pounding with anticipation and dread. They knocked frantically on the door, and after what felt like an eternity, Lily's parents answered. Please, you have to help us, Emma pleaded, her voice trembling with emotion. Lily's in danger. We saw her with a man, and he took her into that old house on the edge of town. Lily's parents listened in growing horror as the teens recounted their story. Without hesitation, they sprang into action, their faces pale with fear for their daughter's safety. We need to go to the police right away, Lily's father said, his voice urgent. We have to tell them everything. The group piled into the car, their hearts pounding as they raced towards the nearest police station. Lily's parents told the officers everything they knew, their voices shaking with fear and desperation. But even as they spoke, doubt lingered in the air. The officers exchanged skeptical glances, their expressions guarded. We'll look into it, but without any evidence, there's not much we can do, one of them said, his tone dismissive. Lily's parents pleaded with them, their voices filled with anguish and fear. But the officers remained unmoved, their skepticism unyielding. Defeated but undeterred, the group left the police station, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that time was running out. They knew they couldn't rely on the authorities to save Lily. They would have to take matters into their own hands, no matter the risk. With renewed determination, They set off once again into the night, their minds racing with thoughts of their missing friend and the horrors that awaited her in the darkness. Relief washed over the group as the police finally agreed to accompany them to the old, abandoned house on the edge of town. Lily's parents and the teenagers clung to hope as they raced through the streets, their hearts pounding with anticipation. As they arrived at the decrepit house, the police wasted no time in securing the area. Flashlights pierced the darkness as they searched every corner, every shadow, their movements methodical and precise. But as minutes turned to hours, their hope began to fade. The house was empty, save for the dust and cobwebs that filled the air. There was no sign of Lily, no trace of the man who had taken her. Panic surged through the group as they realized the enormity of the situation. Lily was gone, vanished without a trace, and they were no closer to finding her than they had been before. "We have to keep looking," Jake said, his voice trembling with emotion. "We can't give up on her." With heavy hearts, they left the abandoned house behind, their minds swirling with questions and fear. Where had Lily gone? Who had taken her? And why? But as they searched the streets and alleys once again, their hope began to wane. Lily's disappearance remained a mystery, a puzzle with no solution in sight. As the night wore on and exhaustion set in, they were forced to accept the unthinkable, that Lily may never be found, that she may be lost to them forever. But even in the face of despair, they refused to give up hope. They would search every corner of the earth if they had to, scouring every shadow until they found their friend and brought her home, safe and sound. The revelation hit them like a ton of bricks. Lily's disappearance was not an isolated incident. It was part of something much darker, much more sinister than any of them could have imagined. As they pieced together the puzzle, they uncovered a network of stalkers and kidnappers operating right under their noses. The men who had taken Lily were not working alone. They were part of a larger organization, preying on unsuspecting teenagers and using them for illegal activities like drug trafficking. The realization sent chills down their spines. How many others had fallen victim to these predators? How long had they been operating in their midst, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike? Fear mingled with anger as they realized the magnitude of the danger they were facing. They had stumbled upon something far beyond their wildest nightmares, something that threatened not only their friend's life, but their own as well. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, they refused to back down. They would not let fear paralyze them, would not let despair consume them. They would fight, tooth and nail, until every last one of those monsters was brought to justice. Armed with nothing but their determination and a fierce sense of justice, they set out once again into the night, their hearts filled with resolve. They may have been just teenagers, but they would stop at nothing to protect their friends, their community, and themselves from the darkness that lurked in the shadows. And so, their journey continued, their path fraught with danger and uncertainty. But as long as they stood together, as long as they refused to give up hope, they knew they could overcome anything that stood in their way. For they were more than just friends, they were warriors, fighting for justice in a world gone mad. The story of Lily's disappearance and the sinister network of kidnappers sent shockwaves through the community, spreading like wildfire across social media and dominating the headlines of every news outlet. The once quiet suburban neighborhood was thrust into the spotlight, its residents gripped by fear and uncertainty. As the days turned into weeks, the search for Lily intensified, with volunteers combing every inch of the town, hoping for any sign of her whereabouts. The police worked tirelessly, following every lead, every clue, in their quest to bring her home. But as the weeks stretched into months, hope began to wane. Lily's face stared out from missing person posters plastered on every street corner, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked in their midst. Meanwhile, speculation ran rampant as to the identity of the mastermind behind the kidnappings. Some whispered of shadowy criminal organizations, while others pointed fingers at rogue elements within the community itself. But one thing was clear: the person behind it all remained elusive, their identity shrouded in mystery. They operated with impunity, striking fear into the hearts of all who crossed their path. As the days turned into months, the town remained on edge, haunted by the specter of Lily's disappearance and the unknown danger that lurked in the shadows. But even in the face of such uncertainty, the community refused to give up hope. They would continue to search, to fight, until Lily was brought home and the darkness that had descended upon their town was banished once and for all. The police, determined to crack the case and bring Lily home, devised a plan to canvass the entire town, asking residents if they had seen anything suspicious on the night of her disappearance. They conducted countless interviews, painstakingly piecing together the events of that fateful evening in the hopes of finding a clue, however small, that could lead them to Lily's whereabouts. Weeks turned into months as the investigation stretched on, the town gripped by a sense of urgency and unease. Every lead, every potential sighting was meticulously pursued, but the trail seemed to grow colder with each passing day. Then, a breakthrough. A man came forward with a crucial piece of information. He recounted how, on the night of Lily's disappearance, he had been on a camping trip with his family in the nearby forest. As they hiked through the dense undergrowth, he caught a glimpse of a teenage girl, her features obscured by the shadows. At the time, he hadn't thought much of it, assuming she was simply another hiker enjoying the beauty of the forest. But when he saw Lily's photo on the news days later, something stirred in his memory, a nagging feeling that perhaps he had seen her that night after all. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community, reigniting hope that Lily might still be alive. The police wasted no time in launching a search of the forest, scouring every inch of the rugged terrain in the hopes of finding a clue that could lead them to Lily's whereabouts. As the search intensified, the town held its breath, praying for a miracle. For the first time since Lily's disappearance, there was a glimmer of hope, a faint ray of light piercing the darkness that had descended upon their town. And so, the search continued, fueled by determination and a steadfast belief that no matter how dark the night may seem, there is always hope for a new dawn. The forest echoed with the sound of footsteps as a massive group of police officers and FBI agents combed through the dense undergrowth, their flashlights cutting through the darkness like beacons of hope. Every tree, every rock, every shadow was scrutinized as they searched for any sign, any clue that could lead them to Lily. Hours turned into days as the search dragged on, the tension mounting with each passing moment. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig set their hearts racing, hoping against hope that they were drawing closer to their elusive quarry. Then, amidst the chaos and uncertainty, a breakthrough. A sharp-eyed policeman stumbled upon a small tuft of hair caught on a branch, barely visible in the dim light. With trembling hands, he carefully collected the evidence, knowing that it could be the key to unlocking the mystery of Lily's disappearance. The hair was sent to the crime lab for analysis, where forensic experts worked tirelessly to unravel its secrets. And when the results came back, they revealed a chilling truth. The hair belonged to a 34-year-old man, a member of the very organization responsible for Lily's abduction. The revelation sent shockwaves through the ranks of law enforcement, confirming their worst fears. The kidnappers were not just a ragtag group of criminals, they were a well-organized, highly sophisticated operation, with tendrils that reached far and wide. But even in the face of such daunting odds, the authorities refused to back down. They would pursue every lead, follow every trail, until they brought Lily home and brought those responsible to justice. And so, the hunt continued, fueled by a fierce determination to see justice served and to ensure that no more innocent lives fell victim to the darkness that lurked in the shadows. For Lily, and for all those who had vanished without a trace, they would not rest until the truth was brought to light, no matter the cost. After weeks of painstaking investigation and tireless pursuit, the authorities finally had a breakthrough. They meticulously crafted a plan to apprehend the 34-year-old man, knowing that he was the key to unraveling the tangled web of the organization behind Lily's abduction. With every detail meticulously planned and every contingency accounted for, they lay in wait, their hearts pounding with anticipation. And then, just as they had hoped, their target appeared, a solitary figure moving through the darkness, his every step a sinister echo of the danger that lurked in the shadows. The officers sprang into action, moving swiftly and silently to surround the man before he had a chance to flee. With nowhere to run and no one to turn to, he was swiftly and decisively taken into custody, his reign of terror brought to an abrupt and satisfying end. As they led him away in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage and defiance, the authorities knew that they had struck a blow against the darkness that had threatened their community. But even as they celebrated their victory, they knew that their work was far from over. For even as the 34-year-old man was led away to face justice, they knew that others like him still lurked in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. And so, they remained vigilant, their resolve unshaken, knowing that as long as they stood together, they would never allow the darkness to prevail. And so, the story of Lily's abduction came to a close, a testament to the power of determination and the triumph of justice over evil. But even as the town breathed a sigh of relief, they knew that they would never forget the horrors that had unfolded in their midst, and that they would always remain vigilant against the darkness that lurked in the shadows. After the arrest, the authorities interrogated the man relentlessly, determined to uncover the truth about Lily's abduction and the organization behind it. They knew that he held the key to unlocking the mystery, and they refused to let up until he confessed. For hours on end, they questioned him, probing for any sign of weakness, any crack in his facade. But the man remained silent, his lips sealed tight, his eyes filled with defiance. But the investigators were not about to give up. They pressed on, using every tactic at their disposal to break through his defenses. And finally, after countless hours of questioning, the man's resolve began to crumble. With sweat dripping from his brow and his voice trembling with fear, he finally cracked, revealing the truth about the organization he worked for and the dark deeds they had committed. He exposed their secrets, their methods, their connections, laying bare the true extent of their depravity. Under intense questioning, the man finally started talking. He told them about the group he was part of, how they operated, and what they did to teenagers like Lily. He explained that their organization was like a big, bad gang that did illegal stuff, like selling drugs and doing other bad things. He said they would target teenagers, like Lily, because they were easy to manipulate and use for their shady business. The man told them about how they would lure teenagers in, pretending to be nice or offering them things they wanted, like money or drugs. Once they got them hooked, they would make them do all sorts of bad stuff, like selling drugs or doing dangerous things. He said they would threaten the teenagers, telling them they would hurt them or their families if they didn't do what they said. And if anyone tried to escape or tell the police, they would hunt them down and make them pay. The man also told them about the other people in the organization, how they were all connected and worked together to keep their operation running smoothly. He gave them names and locations, hoping it would help them catch the rest of the bad guys. As he spoke, the investigators listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions to make sure they understood everything he was saying. And with each new piece of information, they got closer to unraveling the tangled web of lies and deceit that had ensnared Lily and so many others. Armed with the man's confession, the authorities launched a massive operation to take down the organization once and for all. It was a long and difficult process, but in the end, justice prevailed and Lily's abductors were brought to justice, ensuring that no more innocent lives would be lost to their evil deeds. With the information provided by the man, the authorities swiftly mobilized a massive operation to dismantle the criminal organization and bring Lily home. Hundreds of policemen and FBI agents were enlisted, their ranks swelling as they prepared to confront the darkness that had gripped their community. It was a daunting task, but they were determined to see it through, no matter the cost. They meticulously planned every detail, coordinating their efforts to ensure maximum effectiveness and minimal risk. Teams were assigned specific roles and targets, their movements synchronized to strike with precision and efficiency. As the operation got underway, the town buzzed with anticipation, its streets alive with the sound of sirens and the sight of flashing lights. Residents watched from their windows, their hearts filled with hope and fear as they awaited news of the outcome. The authorities moved swiftly and decisively, raiding hideouts and rounding up suspects with relentless determination. Doors were kicked in, arrests were made, and evidence was seized, each action bringing them one step closer to their goal. But amidst the chaos and confusion, their primary objective remained clear: finding Lily and bringing her home. Every lead, every clue, was pursued with unwavering focus as they combed through the town and its surrounding areas with a fine-toothed comb. Hours turned into days as the search wore on, the tension mounting with each passing moment. But still, they refused to give up hope, knowing that every second brought them closer to their goal. And then, just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a breakthrough, a tip from a concerned citizen led them to a remote cabin deep in the woods. With bated breath, they approached, their guns drawn and their hearts pounding in their chests. And there, inside the cabin, they found her, Lily, pale and shaken but alive, her eyes filled with relief as she was reunited with her family at last. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to the power of perseverance and the indomitable spirit of those who refused to give up hope. As the town rejoiced and celebrated the return of one of their own, the authorities knew that their work was far from over. For even as they celebrated their victory, they knew that there were still others out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. But with their resolve unshaken and their determination unwavering, they would continue to fight, ensuring that no more innocent lives would be lost to the darkness that lurked in their midst. With Lily safely returned home, the authorities intensified their efforts to apprehend the remaining members of the criminal organization. Armed with the information provided by Lily and the man they had captured, they launched a series of coordinated raids, targeting the various hideouts and safe houses used by the group. In the days that followed, the town witnessed a flurry of activity as police officers and FBI agents descended upon known hotspots, their presence a stark reminder of the relentless pursuit of justice. Doors were kicked in, suspects were arrested, and evidence was seized as the authorities closed in on those responsible for Lily's abduction and the crimes committed by the organization. But amidst the chaos and confusion, Lily's voice rang out loud and clear as she bravely shared her story with the world. In interviews with the media, she recounted the harrowing ordeal she had endured, the fear, the uncertainty, the moments of despair, as she fought to survive in the clutches of her captors. She spoke of how the man had lured her away with promises of friendship and adventure, only to reveal his true intentions once it was too late. She described the lies and manipulation, the threats and coercion that had kept her trapped in a nightmare of fear and uncertainty. And as she spoke, her words resonated with others who had suffered at the hands of the same organization, including her friend Sarah, who had also been kidnapped and held captive. Together, they shared their stories, their voices joining in a chorus of defiance against those who had sought to silence them. But amidst the pain and trauma, there were moments of hope and triumph as Lily recounted the acts of kindness and bravery that had sustained her through the darkest of times. She spoke of the strangers who had offered her help and support, the authorities who had worked tirelessly to bring her home, and the love and support of her family and friends that had never wavered. And as she stood before the world, a beacon of strength and resilience, Lily vowed to never let her voice be silenced again. She would continue to speak out against the injustices she had endured, to fight for those who could not fight for themselves, and to ensure that no one else would ever have to suffer as she had. And so, the town rallied behind her, their hearts filled with admiration and gratitude for her courage and determination. And as the remaining members of the criminal organization were brought to justice one by one, the town breathed a collective sigh of relief, knowing that justice had finally been served, and that Lily's bravery had helped to shine a light into the darkness, illuminating a path towards a brighter, safer future for all. After relentless pursuit, the FBI, in collaboration with local law enforcement, successfully tracked down and apprehended every member of the criminal organization responsible for Lily's abduction. It was a monumental task, requiring months of meticulous investigation and countless hours of surveillance, but their efforts had paid off in the end. With each arrest, the grip of fear that had held the town in its thrall began to loosen, replaced by a sense of relief and triumph. The streets buzzed with excitement as news of the arrest spread like wildfire, and residents breathed a collective sigh of relief, knowing that justice was finally being served. But the work was far from over. As the authorities interrogated the captured members of the organization, they uncovered a web of corruption and deceit that stretched far beyond the borders of their small town. It was a sprawling network, with connections to other criminal enterprises and shadowy figures operating in the darkest corners of society. But the authorities were undeterred. Armed with the information provided by the captured members, they launched a series of coordinated operations to dismantle the organization once and for all. Raids were conducted, evidence was seized, and suspects were arrested as the authorities moved swiftly and decisively to root out the cancer that had plagued their community. As the dust settled and the smoke cleared, the town breathed a collective sigh of relief. The streets were safer, the air was sweeter, and the people walked with a newfound sense of confidence and security. But amidst the celebrations, there was a sense of profound gratitude and humility as the town came to terms with the enormity of what had been achieved. For Lily and Sarah, and all those who had been victimized by the organization, it was a moment of redemption, a chance to reclaim their lives and their futures. And as they looked towards the horizon, their hearts filled with hope and possibility, they knew that no matter what trials may lie ahead, they would face them together, united in strength and resilience. And so, the town emerged from the darkness, stronger and more determined than ever before. And as they looked towards the future, they did so with a renewed sense of hope and optimism, knowing that no matter what challenges may come their way, they would face them with courage and conviction, secure in the knowledge that they had overcome the darkness and emerged into the light once more.